Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And in this occasion, I would like to present my study entitled Rendering Metaphors and Simile of the Oval Ounce in ROALD DAHL'S, James and the Giant Peach and its Indonesian translation. My name is Almira Gasani Sabina Romala and I'm from Universitas Sanata Dharma. Okay, in this research, I analyzed the metaphor and simile translation in a literary work. And why metaphor and simile translation? As we know that in translation, we render the meaning of a text into another language in the way that the author intended the text. And there is a problem in rendering the meaning of a text when we come to a figurative language, such as metaphor and simile, as they are a comparison and they don't use a literal word. They are culturally bound and influenced by the culture. There are some problems arise because of this, the use of this metaphor and simile, and it is problematic for the translator to translate this figurative language, as perhaps in the source language and the target language they have different image, so that if we translate it literally, the meaning will be nonsense. And the object of this research is James and the Giant Peach, written by Roald Dahl, and also its Indonesian version, James dan Persik Raksasa. And the story of this novel revolves around James, the main character. But in this research, we focus more on his awful aunts that like to bully him, Aunt Spike, Aunt Spiker, and Aunt Sponge. And they are described in the form of simile and also metaphor in the narration and also in the poem of the novel. It is found in the first and the second chapter of the novel. And by using the description of the aunts, it also showed the power relation between Aunt Spiker and Aunt Sponge as the suppressed and the oppressed James. And the subject of this research is metaphor and simile. So let's talk about the definition of metaphor. Metaphor is a comparison of two different objects with possess similarity indirectly. So in the example, she is a fox. So she is described and compared to a fox. It doesn't have to be like the physical appearance, but perhaps the personality or the quality. And for simile, it is more explicit and direct comparison. So it is an explicit comparison of two different objects or concepts which possesses a similarity, but it uses the word like, as, resembles, or similar. So for example, she is like a fox. So that is the indicator or marker of simile. They are the word like, as, resemble, or similar. And in translating metaphor, but in this case, in this research, I will also use it to identify the translation strategies to metaphor and both simile. It is proposed by Peter Newmark in his book A Textbook of Translation, published in 1988. There are 7 strategies in translating metaphor. The first one, reproducing the same image in the target language. When the image is universal, so it is also found in the source language in the target language also, so there is no difficulty in translating it. And the second one is replacing the image in the source language with the standard target language image. So it is when the target language has no equivalent image in compared to the source language, but they have a similar image. And the third strategy is translating metaphor by simile. So the form is changed from metaphor to simile, but there will be also some different effect, as simile is more explicit and direct. And the fourth is translating metaphor by simile plus sense. So it changed the form from metaphor to simile, but it also added with the sense or the meaning. And the next strategies is converting metaphor to sense. So the metaphor form is changed into the meaning of the metaphor. So there is no metaphor expression. So in the translated version, we will have the non-metaphorical form. And the next strategies is deletion. So the metaphorical expression is deleted and untranslated. And it is also not translated into the sense, but the whole of the expression is deleted. And the last one is translating the metaphor by the same metaphor combined with sense. It is used to ensure the readers fully understand the metaphor or the expression. And in the findings and the discussion of this study, there are 4 strategies found in translating the metaphor and simile in James and the Giant Peach. The first one is reproducing the same image in the target language. The first example is found in this utterance, these 2 ghastly hags, translated into kedua nenek sihir itu. The metaphor hags is translated into nenek sihir as they are equivalent and the same. Hex or witch, the synonym, is nenek sihir in bahasa Indonesia. They are used to describe how cruel the owners of James as nenek sihir in Indonesia is usually used to describe a cruel women, old women, something like that. And the second example, I think you'd make on Spiker said, a lovely Frankenstein. And it is translated into ku yakin kau pantas, Bibi Spiker menukas, jadi Frankenstein yang melar. The metaphor Frankenstein is maintained and reproduced in the target language, as in Indonesia we also know about Frankenstein, a figure in Mary Shelley's novel. But there is a difference. The adjective lovely is not translated, but it used yang melar instead in the Bahasa Indonesia version. It is used as the compromise or the consequence of the poem that it needs to be rhyming with the other lines. Yeah, it corresponds to the line bintang-bintang film bubar. Okay, so for the sake of the rhyme. And the second strategy is replacing the image in the source language with standard target language image. In this example, we have my dear old trout, translated into dasar ikan selar. Trout is a freshwater fish, but it is not commonly found in Indonesia. So the translator decided to use ikan selar. It is a marine fish and it is more common in Indonesia. So by using this image, ikan selar is more familiar and it is more natural in the use of the metaphor. And it is also used to make an internal rhyme, dasar ikan selar. And the third strategy found is translating metaphor by simile. So that is a change of the form from metaphor, small piggy eyes, into a simile, mata kecil seperti mata babi. This one has an effect of more direct comparison, mata kecil seperti mata babi. So it's more explicit and has a more instant effect than the metaphor one. And it is also used to compensate that there are already a lot of implicit metaphor or comparison in the source target, and it is used to describe more that the description of on sponge is really bad and awful by saying it as having mata kecil seperti mata babi, bibir yang menekuk ke bawah, and wajah putih kendur bergelambir. And that's how the translator translate the metaphor into simile. And the last strategy is converting metaphor to sense. So it also involves a change in the form. as the metaphor is translated into non-metaphorical form. In the example, they were both really horrible people. The horrible people in this metaphor is translated into keduanya adalah orang yang bertabiat buruk. So it is translated into the meaning or the sense, and there is also a shift from horrible as adjective, and there is a change of noun, the class, it changed into verb bertabiat. Okay, bertabiat buruk is more descriptive and more informative rather than if we use the figurative language such as metaphor. And the second example showing the strategies of converting metaphor to sense is in the poem, "Behold my heavenly silky locks." It is translated into "Lihat indahnya rambutku." The expression heavenly and silky is translated into descriptive one into the sense indahnya. So it is more direct and it is more informative and it's clear, but somehow it has a distortion of meaning as there is no figurative meaning in this translated version, but it is understood as it is also to compensate the limit of the syllable in the poem as they are limited, and it is also used to make a rhyme with the other lines in the poem. Lihat indahnya rambutku jika kau buka kaos kakiku. So to make the rhyme ku in the final position of the line. So there are 4 strategies in translating metaphor and simile in James and the Giant Peach, and in its Indonesian translation version, James and Persik Raksasa. And from these findings, we know that it is not an easy task to translate metaphor and similes. We have to pick the right strategies in considering to preserve the form and also the sense. Although it is hardly possible to maintain both of the element, form and sense in the source language to the target language, but at least they are still possess the same strength of the power relation reflected by the use of the figurative language, and also the other important element is the aesthetic aspect, such as rhymes and also the other musical devices or the other figurative language, if any, that is present in the original work, as it also reflects the style of the author in using the word play. So we as translator cannot change the style of the author and we have to maintain it in our best. And guys, and maintaining the form and the sense of the metaphors and simile is indeed very difficult in translation, but it is worth to try, as it is like rendering the soul of the beautiful book. So we can apply and those metaphor translation strategies proposed by Newmark or by any other strategies to preserve this. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity in presenting my study. So that's all. Thank you very much.